Hello, I'm Malcolm West and this is Project Management Basics, everything you need to make your project a success. This is session 9 and we're going to be looking at closing our small project. Just like all the other sessions, practical minimum jargon, looking at the free tools that you can use to achieve what we're talking about 10-minute session. So, your work here is done. That's great, but we ought to just check that it actually is. Has the project actually finished? So, are all the deliverables complete? Everything that we said we were going to do at the beginning of the project, has that been done? Has the things that need to be handed over to operations or to the customer been done? Is that documented? Have we done all the training? We haven't just thrown something over the wall, but it's actually properly completed. And is that to the satisfaction of the customer? The operations group, whoever is receiving our project. Has acceptance been given and has that been documented? Has it been done verbally or have we got that in writing or an email or something of that type? So we ought to be absolutely sure in terms of documenting our project, and we had a session on delivery earlier where we talked about acceptance rather than delivery really being the important thing. Has all that been documented to our satisfaction? And here we're talking about the whole thing of the project, not just each of the separate individual deliverables. If that is the case, and hopefully it will be, if not, go back and get it sorted out, then we can talk about closing down the project. So quite a few things we need to do. Projects are temporary structures. They shouldn't be running on into the next project, etc. We should close it down, start a new one. So we need to release the resources that have been used by the project. That might be people, it might be equipment, it might be meeting rooms and locations, IT support, etc. Those things need to be handed back over in a sensible, ordered way. And the finance systems might need to be closed down and all that sort of thing. So there's organisational structures that are put in place that might need to be closed out. So make sure the expenses are in and budgets are finally signed off and all that sort of stuff. Practical things that need to be done, house tidying activities. The last few things you're going to do as part of a process, though, are around post-project reviews. On larger projects, that's quite common, especially if something's gone wrong. There might be significant lessons to learn. A sort of review of the project might be undertaken. Some organisations do that for every project. Might just be a quick 5-minute, 10-minute sit down and chat through. It could be, more substantial than that as well. End project report, which is documenting how the project has gone, picking out any key points that need to be made, and may in fact be handed over as part of the deliverables of the project, and sharing any significant lessons learned. So obviously you will have hopefully been keeping a list of lessons learned. We talked about that at the end of the delivery stages earlier, of things that you've discovered as you've gone through the project. A really good place for thinking about those are the risk and issue registers as well. They will talk about things that have happened or might have happened during the project and are therefore useful perhaps to following projects. And also perhaps to other currently operational running projects. So it's good to share those things around. Hopefully your organisation has a way of doing that. If it doesn't, then you might want to speak to the sponsor or customer about how they want those distributed. And there will be some post-project arrangements. So you've perhaps handed over to operations, but often an aspect of completion of a project is that it happens before the benefits are realised from the project. So you've perhaps put in place some new system to streamline operations. Well, even if there might have been a testing phase in that, really you don't know whether it streamlined operations properly to the degree that was anticipated at the beginning of the project until it's properly operational. And that should really be examined, because if in a proper benefits understanding model, you're doing a project because you've said it's going to save you some money or gain you some extra revenue or do something like that. You don't really actually know that that's the case till the project's gone live and you've tested that. And it's important to test that for the long-term viability of the organisation and the business, that it's doing projects that actually deliver what they are supposed to deliver. Now the project team will have been split up probably, and off doing other things by that point, but that responsibility should be passed on to the operations to assess that and identify whether that matched the original requirement, whether it was better, whether it was worse, because that's useful feedback for the next exercises and decisions that are made. So post-project arrangements like that, there will be also be things that are in the risk and issue registers that you anticipated maybe still might happen, and they maybe still may happen, and they again should be passed on as well. That's useful insight for the people who are running the delivered project. All the materials that you've produced in delivering the project may need to be kept, archived, retained for a certain period. Sometimes there's a legal requirement to do that. If it's a drugs project or something with a health and safety requirement, there might be a minimum period for which all the materials have to be kept. Now you can do that with the tool. You can take all the documentation and create an extract of it and store that, and that should be again handed over and stored in the appropriate way. So there's some things here to be done. Obviously many of the team have gone, the project manager and perhaps an administrator ends up doing all these sorts of stuff, but they are very important. It's not just a question of handing over the deliverable and then walking away. You need to make sure the thing is closed out and managed as a process to the very end. So let's go and have a look at a few of those bits then in practice. So, as we did before, we're going to open our Community Edition, which is the starting point always for these exercises. And here we are. And we'll go and open our project. And we've got a close phase here in the process, and again it's shown as a documentation that's appropriate at that point, and we'll see the sorts of things that we've just been talking about here. We're thinking about the benefits management, how's that been progressing. We might want to start documenting that and what we've seen already from perhaps the test phases in terms of what the benefits seem to be from the deliverables. We want to wrap up our plans and risks and issue registers, showing that we've got through to completion, identifying any costs and financial aspects through all that, and coming down to produce an end project report. Now if we just have a view of the end project report, it'll have in all those sorts of things that we've just been talking about that need to be wrapped up, and so again it's a really good sort of checklist for you of the things that you might consider at this point in the project life cycle. So we've got project manager's report, review of business case, project objectives, team performance, etc., etc. One thing I meant to mention earlier, when you're releasing resources, and it's a sort of maturing thing actually, when you're releasing resources, rather than just handing them back, it may be useful for the people who provided those resources to give some sort of feedback on them, whether that's a person or a piece of equipment or facility, to provide some feedback that might help in a growing, maturing organisation. Lessons, etc. So we've got again a template with the sections here and some guidance materials at the end about what we might put in. So you've got the materials there to go away and do those things, and then in terms of archiving your project, well, you can do all that from here. So you'll have here all these files and all the multiple versions of them and all the correspondence you'll be collecting and evidence and documentation. So we might have started with 10 or 15 templates, but we might end up with many hundreds of documents. And so the system allows you to do that. You can come up here to File and Folders. You can come and find your projects folder, and that project folder will contain all the versions of all the documentation from this project. So you can simply copy that, put it on a network store wherever it's supposed to be archived. It might need to be in a DVD, perhaps with hard copy files as well, depending on the organisation and its policies. But you need to find that out and then follow that. But you can get all that documentation from here in one set. And actually you can take that folder away and you can then bring it back and drop it on a Community Edition again to make it live again later. So it's not just like a snapshot, it's actually an active record of the entire project. Okay, so that's covering off the archiving. We've closed our project. Pretty straightforward. Let's just come back and pick up our last slide. So in the next session, the last session of these first 10 planned, we're going to talk about maturing and leading on from our first successful project, hopefully, into what do we do next. Okay, thank you very much.